I tried. And thankfully, I was blessed and woke up the next morning. But I was good with it. Like, I made a split-second decision that could have had drastic effects on so many people. And that attempt is what made me start to say, I need help. And I asked to leave the show. So a lot of people don't, unless you've read the book, most people don't know that story, is because I left Top Chef Kentucky because I wasn't in a good place mentally. Like, I asked to speak with the therapist. The therapist got me out of the show, and I went home. I was supposed to go to Macau with them, and I didn't go to China. I didn't travel. Like, I came back to Colorado, and I still went right back into work. Like, I didn't talk about it. I didn't even share this with my wife. Like, this is what I had actually tried to do to myself.
Dang, man.
Like, I just went right into it. And I was talking with my therapist at the time, and he said something that hit me really hard. He said, brother, that's probably the first time in your life where you chose to remove yourself from that situation instead of just taking the pain. You know, normally your whole defense mechanism, your survival method as an adolescent, you would have just taken the pain and just sat in it. He's like, but you chose to get out of it. And that was when I realized, like, I was making a conscious decision to change my situation. And it just forced me to start going to the therapist more, talking about what was actually going on in my head, what was going on in my heart, what had happened to me in my past, starting to have those conversations with those closest to me in my circle, eventually realizing that a lot of people are just hiding this, right? They are just as broken as I was. And if I could find the strength to talk about this in public, because it's uncomfortable, right? Nobody wants to talk about what they are going through or what they did to themselves or something they're very shameful of. Somebody needed to hear it. And I just had this message hit me of, your story's not meant for you. Your story's meant for somebody else to hear.
Welcome back to the COS Business Podcast, #1 podcast in Colorado Springs.
Today, our highlighted sponsor is Home Day. You can check them out at gethomeday.com.
All right. Today's a very, very special episode. We have Chef Brother Luck on our show. Thank you so much for coming, man.
Hey, what's going on? Super excited to be here.
Yeah, brother. We are so excited to have you on. You have quite a story. We did some research on you and just learned a whole bunch about you. But
let's go.
Yeah, man. You're a local gem here in town. And I'm just so excited to dive in. And first and foremost, like, thank you for all what you do for our city and all the restaurants that you've opened, all the different things you've exposed our city to as far as different types of food and culture. We really appreciate it. And let's just start from the beginning. Like, you've been here for quite some time here in Colorado Springs, but you're not from here. You're from California. I'm actually from Sacramento. So we have some level of same origin, but talk a little bit about like where you came from, kind of what got you started in the food industry. I think it's a really cool story.
Yeah. My story begins in California. Grew up in the Bay Area, just a city kid, and experienced some hardships. I mean, I think life comes at you fast and it comes at you unexpectedly. And when it happens, you gotta kind of take those punches. And for me, it transitioned me into Phoenix, Arizona at the time as a teenager. Phoenix was hot. And, you don't hang out on street corners in Phoenix. It's too hot outside. So I went to school and they put me in a vocational program. And that vocational program is really where I found mentorship. I found guidance. I found grown men who made me believe in myself. I didn't want to be a chef until they told me I was good at cooking. And they encouraged me to keep being a great cook. So that led to competitive cooking at a high school level, competed on that circuit, ended up winning Arizona Best Teen Chef, went to nationals, ended up competing in nationals in Atlanta, Georgia, earned a full tuition scholarship worth $30,000. That sent me to culinary school in Phoenix. So got to train under some amazing chefs at that program, competed on that college team, traveled around doing cooking competitions in, many states. And eventually landed here in Colorado.
That's crazy,
It's
man.
crazy.
Well, there's definitely some things that you mentioned there. You're talking about male role models, like and getting involved in vocational school. Your father actually passed away when you were a little bit younger, right?
Mhm.
And kind of left that void in your, I'm sure, in your childhood. And I'm sure, with as you know, a positive male role model is so mission critical. And so many young men, especially in the United States, it's kind of an epidemic that a lot of them don't have that male role model. Talk a little bit about that
Yeah.
experience.
I think especially when it comes to your father, like that's supposed to be your reflection. You're supposed to be the image of you're supposed to learn a lot, especially as a young man, so much from that person. And when that person's not in the picture, whether through whatever circumstance, um, you find mentorship in other places. And most of the time it's not good mentorship. I found a lot of bad mentorship. I found hustlers and drug dealers and gangbangers and pimps. And like, that's what I was surrounded by as a young adult. So this is the knowledge that I was soaking up. This was the aspirations that I had. This is who I tried to emulate. And, for a long time, that was where my head was. That's all that mattered. Money, power, respect is kind of what you see and what you're after. And if it wasn't for cooking, it wasn't for chefs taking that interest in me and really giving me guidance and discipline and direction and holding me accountable and setting measurable expectations and then saying, what are you doing with your life? I don't think I'd be here having this conversation today.
We'd like to take a quick break and thank our sponsors.
Planet Duct. Planet Duct is the #1 choice for professional air duct cleaning in Colorado Springs and Southern Colorado. With state-of-the-art equipment and top-tier service, they make sure the air in your home or business is clean and allergen-free. Breathe easier with Planet Duct. Learn more at planetduct.com.
Awesome Home Services. Awesome Home Services delivers top-notch HVAC solutions for your home. Whether you need heating, cooling, or system maintenance, they ensure your comfort year-round. Visit awesomeservice.com for your HVAC needs. That's awesomeservice.com.
Mike Schoening Legal Shield.
So you're out here living your best life and suddenly legal drama slides in your DMs. Major L, right?
Bruh, hard pass. That's why you need Legal Shield. They're like the GOAT of legal protection.
Business contracts covered. Traffic tickets, no sweat. 3 a.m. legal emergency, they're up like, say less.
Hit up the link and get Legal Shield now.
Protect your energy, secure the bag, and stay drama-free, period.
Visit mscheoening.legalshieldassociate.com. Proud American Electrical and Solar.
Give Proud American Electrical and Solar a call today for all your electrical and solar needs. They are locally owned and operated business right here in Colorado Springs. If you're looking for information on solar, this is the company you will want to call. Check out their website at proudamericansolar.com. Use promo code COSBusiness for a 5% discount today.
Franchise Succeed.
Looking to invest in a franchise or grow your current one? The experts at Franchise Succeed help you navigate the world of franchising with proven strategies and guidance. Whether you're a first-time owner or scaling a franchise empire, they're here to help. Visit franchisesucceed.com to get started. That's franchisesucceed.com.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care. Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care offers affordable, accessible healthcare with a focus on you. They provide exceptional primary care without the hassle of insurance barriers. Experience a patient-centered approach. Learn more at pinnacleapc.com. Celebrity DJ.
Make your next event unforgettable with Celebrity DJ. From weddings to corporate events, they deliver energy and entertainment that keeps the party going. Visit celebrity-dj.com to book your DJ today.
Storybook Destinations. Turn your dream vacation into a reality with Storybook Destinations. They specialize in creating custom travel experiences from Disney vacations to bucket list adventures. Start planning today at StorybookDestinations.com. That's StorybookDestinations.com.
And now let's get back to the show. Yeah. What do you think that those early on mentors, those male role models, what do you think they saw in you?
I don't know what they saw in me, man. I was bad. I've always been a curious person. I think my survival tactic for growing up where I grew up was really about paying attention to your surroundings and always being aware of what's going on, knowing what to stay out of, knowing when to insert yourself and when to remove yourself. And as a watcher, as someone who was constantly observing things, I was always very curious about why. So I think when I got into kitchens, my heritage definitely kind of fueled a lot of my curiosity. My family's Creole and Cajun, so we grew up eating, really home style Southern food, a lot of jambalaya, a lot of gumbos. That was deeply rooted in there, and also growing up in San Francisco, where you're exposed to places like Chinatown. For me, that was like getting into culinary. That was the first time I actually was interested in school. They gave me a textbook on cakes. And I was like, this is the greatest class ever. And that's what just kind of captured me. And then once I started asking questions, I think that's when people started seeing my potential, and saying, hey, let me show you something. And I wanted to know more. Well, how do I hold that knife? How do I break down that chicken? How do I make that croissant from scratch? How do I roll out that dough? And I just kept showing up, and I kept eating everything that they put in front of me. And next thing I knew, I was in a competitive circuit. And, as someone who played a very high level of basketball as a high school student, competition was ideal. Like, I like that competitive circuit. And I think being in that level as a high school student, it kind of shaped me and molded me. I mean, I don't think I would have done shows like Top Chef or Beat Bobby Flay or Chopped or any of these competitive shows that I've been on without that background, which is why I thrived in that background. Like, I was bred to be that kind of product, and I'm a beast when it comes to that kind of competition circuit. So I've always been around that.
Yeah, expand a little bit more on that. You're talking about competition, and we've actually had this kind of be a revolving theme on the last few episodes of a lot of the
high achievers
in high school athletes, state level, national level. For last week's episode with Justin with wrestling, and I have that with football. Like, growing up, there's something to be said about that. Like, what does it bring out of you that you like, and what level of confidence and discipline does it instill in you as well as an adult?
Well, I think there's a few things that happen when you put yourself out there. One, you're being vulnerable, right? You're putting yourself out there to be judged. And I think anyone who can take on that kind of challenge, that it takes a certain amount of confidence. And it's going to build confidence. It's going to build character. It's going to give you a lot more depth. You're going to learn a lot about yourself when you're put in these scenarios. And for me, that's always been my mindset. Is it's not about winning or losing. Like, I definitely want to win, but the win is not the actual challenge. The win is the experience. And that's just, having lost so many times,
yeah,
I've learned that lesson, right? That's actually the real experience, is the lessons that you're gaining from it. And then what do you do with it? Not making the same mistakes twice, challenging yourself to train harder, to train smarter, to really just dig deep and find what you're made of, and persevere, and be able to go beyond where you ever thought you could. And I ask that to so many young people all the time. Like, why not? Why don't you think you can do that? I have a young lady who works for me right now, and she was talking about her graduation that's coming up from high school. And I'm like, what are you going to do? And she's like, I think about criminology. I'm like, why don't you be a lawyer? She's like, well, I don't think I could be a lawyer. Why not? Why not? Like, you have to ask yourself these questions. And I think when you put yourself into competitions to be judged against others, right, you're going to see what you're made of, and you're also going to learn a lot about yourself.
That's so true. You even brings up Matthew Beam, like limiting beliefs, because we have a young kid that just came on not too long ago, like 2 weeks ago, and he's a millionaire from YouTube. He's 27, multi-millionaire, and like the things that he's done to attain his 7 million subscribers on YouTube are ridiculous. Like, he's been in touch with Mr. Beast for his videos, Mike Tyson. He's been punched in the face by Mike Tyson. You're like, these people are in Colorado Springs, like doing these extraordinary, great things. And like, people like you, like Matthew Beam, are just such great ways for people to really realize, like, limiting beliefs. Like, you don't realize what you can possibly do if you just put yourself out there and not be afraid to. I mean, we all have some level of being afraid to fail, right? A little bit of humility with that, probably. But like, once you put yourself out there, that's all it takes. Like, you don't have to be like extraordinary to put yourself out there.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people, especially those who come from trauma, have victim mentalities. We don't feel like we deserve to be at that level, or we can never achieve that kind of status, or we're not allowed to participate, or we shouldn't be invited to those types of scenarios. And that's always been one of my things, is like, you know, that imposter syndrome, that victim mentality. I carried that for so many years, to where it's like, why not? Like, I'm in here, and I like to do a lot of the things that I never grew up doing, or never inherited, or didn't have people around me, you know, participate in. Like, coming out here to Colorado, especially, like hiking and ice fishing and skiing and snowboarding. Like, there's so many crazy things that you can be out here doing that, you know, for me, growing up in the inner city, like, this isn't real life. And a lot of my family, even, you know, they call me bougie and sell out because I'm out here doing this stuff. But why not? Like, you only get one shot at this life. Like, why wouldn't you push it as hard as you could and experience as much as you can, and, you know, really find the joy in waking up every morning? Like, that's the win. Like, you woke up. What you mad about?
It's so true, man. Talk to us a little bit more about, was Bobby Flay the first kind of big time show that you're on competition wise?
Yeah, you know, I never had a desire to be on television. You know, I auditioned for a couple of shows in the past, but I never really took it serious. I think a lot of chefs who are very passionate about their craft for a long time didn't respect the TV personality. And it's not to say that these TV personalities didn't have accolades, right? They earned their stripes. Many of them did in so many different ways. But you working in a restaurant, working on a line, working in a kitchen is a different kind of grind. And it takes a different kind of mentality. And it wasn't until I declined to do Triple D. They reached out to me to do diners, dives, and drives when they were coming to Colorado Springs, because I had a restaurant called Street Eats at the time. And I was like, nah, I'm good. And I hung up. I want nothing to do with the show. And it was ego, right? It was a young man's ego that I felt like I was not a dive, a diner, a drive. I didn't really respect the brand that he was building. And I was humbled by that when he came to town, because what happened is he went to all these other restaurants and they were all busy, and people were chasing Guy Fieri down. Like, they wanted to be wherever he was. Those restaurants were so busy, and my restaurant wasn't. And I remember having this conversation with one of my mentors, and he was like, "You're an idiot. Why would you turn down free marketing on that type of platform, especially when you live in a second tier city? Like, you missed a lot of revenue in that decision with your ego." And I remember flying home from New York after that conversation, and I was just like, I'm gonna get on TV. I'm gonna become the brand ambassador for Colorado Springs when it comes to cooking, because nobody was representing us on that level. Like, we didn't have the respect of a lot of the chefs, even in the state. Like, Denver didn't invite us to stuff. Aspen didn't invite us to anything. Boulder didn't invite Colorado Springs chefs to anything. Like, if it wasn't at the Broadmoor, you weren't really considered. And that bothered me, especially as someone who had already cooked around the world and had done a lot of things and worked with a lot of these chefs. I disagreed. I feel like the whole point of a Michelin standard is it's worth the journey. Like, Michelin is built on tires. And they would give you these guides to go use the tires. That's the whole point of Michelin. So for me, like, living here in Colorado Springs, it was like, just because they don't think we can do it here doesn't mean we shouldn't, and we can't. We can't cook on that level. We can't serve on that level. And, you know, a lot of that mindset for me started when I took over the Craftwood in Manitou. I thought that was going to be my final home. I love that restaurant. It's a beautiful restaurant. It's tucked into a hillside, and it's very European, and it's historic. And, you know, sadly, that restaurant closed shortly after my departure, but I thought like that was going to be my final home. And once I quit that spot and went into doing my own thing in the back of the Triple Nickel, which was not how I ever envisioned my first restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, cooking in the back of a punk rock bar.
Hold up. That's crazy, actually, not to interrupt you. My current boss right now, he has a restaurant in the Triple Nickel right now.
Yeah, so many of us
Yeah.
have gone through JJ's bar, and I love JJ. I've known JJ a long time. I'm close with the family. Um, I don't think I'd have a restaurant right now if it wasn't for that part of my story, which is
Wow.
starting in the Triple Nickel, and it was a handshake. I JJ's nephew, and JJ owns the Triple Nickel. His nephew worked for me years ago, and eventually became one of my really good friends. And when I moved back here to Colorado Springs and I was kind of finishing out my time at the Craftwood Inn, I was just like, I want to throw a pop-up dinner. I want to do something different. Like, I don't want to cook like this wild game food. I want to cook something crazy. And I had this idea to do this pop-up dinner and control everything. I wanted to control the beverage. I wanted to control the environment. I wanted to control the food, the menu, the marketing. I wanted to control everything. And he was like, why don't you just do it at my uncle's bar? So I drove down there, and I looked at it and I was like, it's a punk rock bar. And I talked to Jay, and Jay was like, yeah, use it on a Sunday. So I threw my first dinner party back in 2013 in the back of the Triple Nickel, and then I did a second one, and that's really where I started getting creative. And that was a Willy Wonka dinner. And I had
cool.
people like eating chocolate menus made out of, rice paper and
Wow, that's fun.
licking schnozberries. And like, it was wild. And that's when I knew I was ready to kind of go for it. And me and JJ had a conversation and a handshake, and I started subletting his kitchen. And I think I was one of the first chefs. I think I was the first chef to actually sublet that kitchen from him. And it's crazy because like when you look at, post my time there, I went on to start Street Eats. Bobby Couch came in. Bobby Couch eventually opened Green Line Grill. You had Munchies came in. They did their thing for a while.
Yeah.
Like so many of us came through that space at the time, and then they eventually transitioned across the street. But it's crazy how things work out. Like I remember, mosh pits and mohawks, and like I'm throwing down quinoa and fogwa. It made no sense.
That's hilarious.
But it was freedom.
Very eclectic then, right? Like to have that kind of weird. I used to do tiny house festivals, which is very strange. Like, because we used to have like classical music at like a tiny house festival. So you have like extreme liberals and extreme conservatives go there because they want to have like 30 of these tiny houses to put on a plot of land and like sell like Airbnbs. And then you have the liberals who wanted to buy a tiny house, just one of them, and throw on land so they don't have to pay taxes, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, the festival was so cool because it was like, these people are all getting along for the first time ever because they're at this festival for different purposes. It's kind of the same thing with like Triple Nickel. They're probably going there for one reason, and they're like, holy crap.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people would like be there just for a show. And it was an open kitchen space. I mean, it was a tiny space, but like I would be standing back there in my chef coat, and I would just create menus off of my thoughts for the day, whatever I could find ingredient wise. And people will walk up and be like, what's that smell? What are you doing back here? And I'd be like, oh, I've got some lamb shanks in the oven. They're like, what's a lamb shank? I'm like, oh, it's like the ankle of a lamb that I've cooked for like 6 hours in orange juice. And they're like, that sounds hella good. And then I start feeding them stuff. And then, then you get all the vegan punk rockers coming in, and like, I'm feeding them all these crazy vegan dishes. And they're like, and they've been on the road. Like musicians travel on the road. They're in vans, they're in buses. Like they're hungry. They're tired of eating junk food at gas stations and drive-thrus. So I think it was actually kind of a cool vibe. And I always tell people like the food that I did at the Triple Nickel in the very beginning of kind of my entrepreneurship was the most honest because it was just me. It was myself, my niece, my wife, some friends would help. Like if a chef was sitting at the counter, a local chef was sitting on the counter and he saw me getting in the weeds, he'd get up and help me out. And then like, it was just real. And I love that that's the foundation of my business strategy and mindset. And, everything that I've done, it really starts with, just kind of walking up to the edge of a cliff and jumping and then building an airplane on the way down.
Yeah, that's the true way of an entrepreneur, right? And oftentimes, like when you're building up teams and stuff, like you see how far you're willing to go to have success. And then you start hiring folks, and then like you see them go through their own tribulations as your employees and stuff like that. You had good mentors growing up, and leadership, it's like its own muscle that you have to learn how to really build and strengthen and build up. Talk a little bit more about that, like leadership as you're doing this. And then I want to talk to you more about the entrepreneurship and creative side, but start with that.
I mean, my mindset right now at this point in my career is everyone's my mentor, right? I'm learning from y'all right now. Like everybody is here to teach you something. And if you don't pay attention, you're going to miss something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like you said, 27, multimillionaire. Why aren't you listening to what this person's saying? They've done something right. So I think that is key in itself. But when it comes to leadership, when it comes to mentorship, this is building trust. You have to learn people as individuals. You have to understand who they are, what's their story, what is fueling them, what's their why, what's motivating them, where they're going to shut down, where you can push, where you can't push. Like you've got to make the effort to build the trust and knock down some of those walls. And you will become a trusted advisor. Eventually, you'll become a friend. And I think that's the one piece in leadership we don't talk about enough is the friendship side, because we're always so, this is business, this is professional, keep it black and white because it is work. But at some point, you're going to depart, they're going to depart, and you're going to build a friendship from that. And I think that's missed opportunities on a lot of leaders, is they don't realize that, new friends are okay, especially once you're out of those working situations. But, I really my success is based on other people's success. I want to see other people do well. Like that's what when I leave this earth, I want people to be like, man, that was a good dude. Like he inspired me. He gave me direction. He gave me courage. He gave me hope. He made me believe in myself. I didn't give up because of what he said or because of his time or his efforts. Like, to me, that's what leadership is really about. It's not about accolades. It's not about, fiscal or wealth. Like the real wealth is the relationship and the people.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that the selflessness that comes from that, do you think that stems from your childhood of like people who are just giving you a helping hand? They didn't necessarily have to, but they were drawn to you to do so. Like, where does that selflessness come from with you where you're like, man, I just want to see you succeed. Like I'm trying to get as many people to succeed as possible because I know what the long run looks like with that.
I think broken people see broken people,
Mm.
and we want to fix each other, right? Because you become that person that would have helped you as a child, and that's what I had a lot in my youth. Is I had broken people see me because I was so broken, and they helped me through my anger. They helped me through my disconnect. They helped me through my walls, and taught me a lot of lessons to give me strength to move forward in my career and say, I'm going to become a good person. I am a good person, and help me start to see that mirror and that reflection and have the conversations with myself, because that's what it's really about, is insecurity, right? We are all so wounded from our stories, every one of us. We don't talk enough about our own insecurities to ourselves. I can tell you all day what you should be doing, but like, am I having that conversation with myself in the mirror? Because I know exactly where I don't like myself, and I know exactly what hurts the most, and I know what I don't want to listen to when the music goes off or the people go away. Like that's the real part where I think we have to pay attention and really focus on.
We're going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Reveal Med Spa. Look and feel your best at Reveal Med Spas. With personalized plans that deliver real results, radiant skin, restored confidence, and natural rejuvenation.
At Reveal Med Spa, we see you more than just aesthetic and wellness treatments. We provide a safe, judgment-free space where you feel valued, heard, and supported.
Visit revealmedspas.com.
I think it is literally just that too. We'll just double check. Book your next session at revealmedspas.com. That's revealmedspas.com.
Home Day. Buying a home shouldn't be overwhelming. Home Day empowers you to save on your mortgage by putting you in control of the process. Lower your cost and take the next step towards home ownership with ease. Visit gethomeday.com today.
Fast Signs. From banners to vehicle wraps, Fast Signs delivers custom visual solutions to help your business stand out. Their team ensures your message is clear, bold, and effective. Get your signage needed handled at fastsigns.com. That's fastsigns.com.
Epic Eyewear.
Stylish, affordable, and designed for adventure, Epic Eyewear has the sunglass and eyewear you need to see life more clearly. From the mountains to the beach, protect your eyes with high-quality frames and lenses. Check out their collection at epiceyewear.com. And by the way, Andrew, we do have a special discount, COSBP15 for 15% off, I believe.
Cars Helping Charities. Turn your unused cars into a meaningful contribution with Cars Helping Charities. They make it easy to donate your vehicle to support local causes. One of the local charities that we like to support on behalf of Cars Helping Charities, actually, and part of their sponsorship is Mattersville. And check them out too.
They're awesome. They are a tiny house community for veterans suffering with PTSD. They have a property out in Yoder, Colorado, and then they also have one in Sedalia, Colorado as well.
Donate today and make a difference. Visit carshelpingcharities.org. That's carshelpingcharities.org.
Dream Accounting Solutions.
Take the stress out of managing your books with Dream Accounting Solutions. They provide reliable expert accounting services tailored to small businesses. Simplify your finances at dreamaccountingsolutions.com. That's dreamaccountingsolutions.com.
Exponential Impact. Exponential Impact is driving innovation and entrepreneurial success in Colorado Springs. Supporting startups with mentorship, funding, and community resources, they help businesses grow and thrive. Learn more about their impact at exponentialimpact.com. That's exponentialimpact.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
It's interesting, especially like you said, with broken people or people with even chips on their shoulder. It seems like either they're like destined to not have much in their life because they kind of build that victim mindset and they kind of just, it's just a spiral for the rest of their life, right? They get to almost success and they kind of give up, and then it's like this death spiral that keeps going and going. It's a cycle. But then they break through, and you see a lot of a lot of people who have broken backgrounds have some of the most success for whatever reason, whether it's that chip on their shoulder or whatever it might be. You look at successful people, Michael Jordan and all these different people, they have a story. You're like, holy shit. Michael Jordan's dad was murdered. A lot of other things that happened in that story. Like, these people who come from broken backgrounds, they're oftentimes the outliers in our lives. Why do you think that is?
I think when you have to fight, you build strength. Like, I mean, you take so many punches, eventually you realize that the punches don't hurt that much no more. And you're okay taking another punch. And now you're starting to feel comfortable throwing a punch back. And I think it's one thing to want a dream, right? To say, I want this, I'm going to make this happen. It's another thing to fight for it. Like, the pandemic taught us all that lesson. Like, how bad do you really want it? How bad you going to fight for it?
Mm-hmm.
Because we had it snatched away from us, right? Time out, pause button. You're not allowed to do anything. And every one of us were like, all of a sudden, emergency plans. Where's the cash at? Like, where's the people at? Where's the support at? Like, everything stopped. And I think that showed a lot of people, especially myself, like, how bad are you willing to fight? And I think that's the bigger part of that story is, like, you know, it's one thing to say you want it. You're going to fight for it once you get it, because it's easy to get it. Anybody can start a business. Anybody can go online and create their LLC and open a bank account and get a sales tax license. Like, that's easy work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how are you going to make sure the money comes in? How are you going to make sure you're paying for the expenses that are required? How are you taking care of those families who work for you? How are you paying for everything and getting creative in your mindset to generate more revenue and more opportunity, right? Because you got to make money, but then you got to make people. And I always tell people at the end of the day, like, my first customer is not the person who pays me. It's actually the person I'm paying. Like, that's my first customer, is my employee. Like, I need to give them that service. I need to give them that experience. I need to focus so hard on giving them that 5-star experience all day that's what's going to make the business work. And too many leaders forget that piece. They think their employees work for them.
Right. It's so true.
You work for your employees.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you've been around long enough in business, we've all had our failures too. So, like,
absolutely,
you have like this worst fear of, like, whatever, I might fail and do these different things. And eventually you have some failures and you're like, okay, that's the worst thing that can happen. Like,
yeah,
it gets
so
you a
what?
little scared, right?
You fell, so what? Start again. Do it again. Like, I burn stuff all the time. I cook it over. I make it again. I go buy the ingredients one more time. I start over. Like, failure is a part of life, and failure will never go away. And if you're never going to make failure go away. So you've just got to learn to start embracing failure and fear, because if you can manage the things around those, now you're going to start to have more success because now you're preparing yourself to embrace the fear, to embrace the failures, and then adapt and evolve from them. You know, I had a mentor tell me when I first started, mistakes, you're allowed to make them once, but the second time they're really expensive. So don't make them a second time. Definitely don't make them a third time. Like, you have to learn from your mistakes and then adapt and evolve and start to shift however you need to shift. But like, the failure is always going to be there, and you're going to learn. Like, that's what experience is failures, right? You went through something, and whether you succeeded or you didn't, you learned something. Like, that's experience.
How important are mentors in all phases of business growth and entrepreneurship?
Well, I think you need people in your life that you can ask questions to. You need to stay curious. And if you don't have those people in different facets of your life, not just, you know, from a leadership perspective, but from a financial perspective, from a relationship perspective, from a mental health perspective, from a physical perspective, right? This is your trainer, this is your coach, this is your therapist. These are all those people in your world. Those are your mentors. And like, you got to continuously build this circle of, you know, I call my 12. You got to build this circle of your 12, because essentially, you know, that's what's feeding your soul. That's who's shaping you and growing you and developing you and pushing you. And that's where you're putting your time and your effort, is into those relationships. And that's sometimes we chase the wrong mentorship and the wrong validation. I mean, I got caught up in that trying to be on TV, right? I was chasing validation instead of chasing relationships that mattered.
Yeah, that's huge. And not to mention, like, just to cut it clear too, like, the restaurant industry has a lot of things that can be not so good influential wise, right? Like, mental health wise, there's long hours, super gritty, a lot of alcohol around, a lot of these different things. And you talk specifically about mental health and a lot of those things that come from the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
Talk about
Well,
that.
you know, the hospitality industry, many of us come from broken backgrounds, because it's an industry where you don't need an education. You don't need to come from some prestigious school. You don't have to have all this, you know, fancy references. Like, you come in and it's based on your character, it's based on your work ethic. And that's what you're judged on. You're judged on your performance. So it is a true vocation. And I think vocational programs, vocational skills, that's where you see the most broken people, because you have to get in there and do the work and do the reps. But with hospitality, you know, you can have the worst day and have the hardest things going on in your life, but you have to go into a restaurant and see people at their happiest, right? They're celebrating a birthday, they're celebrating an anniversary, they're celebrating a graduation, and you just had a horrible day, and you've got to work through that, and you've got to kind of shake that, and that eats people up. You know, when you're just doing that over and over and over, most people don't wonder how their server's doing. Most people don't worry about like what's going on with the cooks or the dishwashers. Like, those people bond because of that, because they're all in it together. And then the lifestyle of numb yourself until the next shift is what we're taught, right? You work all day, and then you go to the bar at night and numb yourself, and you numb yourself with whatever you numb yourself with, but you're numbing the pain of what's going on in your world. We have to break that cycle, which is why I talk about the uncomfortable, and I talk about it through my own vulnerability. I talk about it through my story. Like, here's my situation. Here's how I got here. Like, I come from this background. This is how I fought for what I got for. And even when I was supposed to be at the top, I was still broken because I never addressed the mental health stuff that was going on in my head and my heart. All the wounds and all the neglect and all the abuse and all the violence and everything that I experienced, I never dealt with. I just worked, and that was my medication, right? Just, I'm clocking in and I'm just ignoring the world. I mean, I missed a lot of relationships of family members and friends growing up because I was always at the kitchen. Like, early in my relationship with my wife, most people thought I was a figment of her imagination because I was never around. I was in a kitchen 12, 14, 16 hours a day, but I was engaged, but that was my medication. That was what I was numbing myself with. And that's not okay. Like we've got to change those environments. We've got to change those examples. And it takes people stepping up to do that. And as a business owner, as someone who I know people are watching, and I have been blessed with platforms to actually share, I want to share the real stuff. I'm not sharing my greatest hits every day. Like, I'm tired of looking at people's page and it's like, look what trip I'm on, look what dinner I'm having,
Yeah.
look what car I'm driving. Like, that's not real. Like, that's such a small glimpse of your day, but I catch my own self measuring myself against your day. And that's not fair for me to judge myself against your greatest hits. So it's why on my platforms I talk about, the vulnerabilities, because it's not always great days. We go through hard stuff. Everybody does. You got a parking ticket. You stubbed your toe. You got in a fight with your spouse. Like, your kids are mad at you. Whatever it is, like, you've had things that have happened to you. Man, share that stuff. People need to hear that part too.
Yeah, one of my favorite things that you do, and it was like a year ago. I'm sure you still do it, but we haven't at least caught on to one of your lives that you do. But you used to like go on live, and then you're like trimming meat for the day, but you're answering questions, doing Q&A, like while you're prepping whatever you're prepping, the meal for the day after or the day of. And it's really cool to see that you connect with your audience like that. And a lot of it's like mental health questions that you're Q&A'ing for your audience as well.
And the crazy part too is like even an example like that where you're using an Instagram or Facebook to go live and engage with an audience. I can tell you, like, as I'm standing there, there's still the insecurity of like, there's not enough people following this. There's not enough people watching this. And like, it's eating me up internally as I'm doing it. Even though like, I know there's like 5 people in here who are really wanting to have a real conversation, and I'm engaging and I'm enjoying the conversation. Like, those insecurities are still real. They're there. And, I think we don't talk about that kind of stuff. Like, that's the real things that we need to be sharing, is like, I feel it too. And I got a lot of followers, and like, I still struggle with it.
Mhm.
Yeah. How do you unpack that for yourself? Because we talk about this mental health and like, different types of outlets that you can to help yourself through those issues. A lot of people have those issues of depression and like not being good enough, feeling good enough, or whatever it might be. What do you do personally to help yourself out?
For me, I had a moment when I was at the pinnacle of my career, which was I was filming my 2nd season of Top Chef, and I hit this like perfect storm of being rejected, being kicked off, being put into an environment where I was isolated and I was alone with myself. And as I got into my own head, I started to believe the lies that I was telling myself. You're not good enough. You let people down. You don't deserve to be here. Like, when you get into that kind of mindset and you start to shut down and you get into that funk goes fast, and you spiral and you can get lost in it. And then when you add in other pieces, other components like alcohol, all of a sudden it gets worse and worse, because now you're on this real down spiral. And for me, Kentucky, being on that season, I was in such a dark place with where I was at in my head that I gave up. I quit. I was done. And fueled with liquor and pills, I tried. And thankfully I was blessed and woke up the next morning. But I was good with it. Like, I made a split-second decision that could have had drastic effects on so many people. And that attempt is what made me start to say, I need help. And I asked to leave the show. So a lot of people don't, unless you've read the book, most people don't know that story, is because I left Top Chef Kentucky because I wasn't in a good place mentally. Like, I asked to speak with the therapist. The therapist got me out of the show. And I went home. I was supposed to go to Macau with them, and I didn't go to China. I didn't travel. Like, I came back to Colorado, and I still went right back into work. Like, I didn't talk about it. I didn't even share this with my wife. Like, this is what I had actually tried to do to myself.
Dang, man.
Like, I just went right into it. And I was talking with my therapist at the time, and he said something that hit me really hard. He said, brother, that's probably the first time in your life where you chose to remove yourself from that situation instead of just taking the pain. Normally your whole defense mechanism, your survival method as an adolescent, you would have just taken the pain and just sat in it. He's like, but you chose to get out of it. And that was when I realized like I was making a conscious decision to change my situation. And it just forced me to start going to the therapist more, talking about what was actually going on in my head, what was going on in my heart, what had happened to me in my past, starting to have those conversations with those closest to me in my circle, eventually realizing that a lot of people are just hiding this, right? They are just as broken as I was. And if I could find the strength to talk about this in public, because it's uncomfortable, right? Nobody wants to talk about what they are going through or what they did to themselves or something they're very shameful of. Somebody needed to hear it. And I just had this message hit me of, your story's not meant for you. Your story's meant for somebody else to hear. And that's why we share our stories. That's why we talk about our vulnerabilities. That's why we share our past. Everybody in this room's got a story and something they've been through and some kind of hardship. And somebody needs to hear that because they're struggling and they're going through it. And you might have persevered beyond where they are right now, which is why we have to share our stories and go through our uncomfortable, because you're meant to help somebody with your story. And that's, it's the biggest reason why I talk about everything I talk about is not for my own peace, but it's for somebody else who needs to hear. And I get messages like that all the time that just reaffirm why I'm out here sharing it. Cause I don't like sharing it, man. It's uncomfortable. But when I get somebody send me a message who's like, bro, like you have no idea. Thank you. Like, I had a professional colleague of mine who I've known for a number of years called me the other day and just was breaking down in tears about just what he was going through. And this is a grown man, like in his 50s. And as he's having life hit him as hard as life's hitting him, he's like, I just need you to know, like, what you're posting and what you're sharing, it hits me and it's keeping me here. I'll keep sharing every day because of that.
That's huge. And it's such a big thing. I don't know why it is. I had somebody last week do the same thing. It's just like when folks are going through that, I mean, we're not all trained in like how to handle like a mental health, crisis going on, but we're there for each other. And sometimes like it just means that we're just a sounding board. We don't necessarily have to have a solution to whatever they're going through. They just need a person to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to say anything back.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just insane to think of all the people. I really do think it's like an epidemic in our, at least in our country, of like young and especially men. And you just mentioned a 50-year-old man, like having a crisis and being aggressive enough to like end their own life. That's insane. Some of these people have families and kids and like
see it all the
and
time.
there's no bounds, right?
No, I mean, I spend a lot of time going to like men's retreats for, studies and spiritual wise. And I listen to these men, like you're talking 100 men on a campsite bonding over 2-3 days. And a lot of these men, it scares the heck out of me because, 50s, 60s, even in their 70s are blowing their own lives up because they haven't dealt with their traumas. They haven't dealt with their story and they're just going through these struggles and they're tired. And it's hard to portray being tough all the time. Like we have this bravado that we have to be hard. Like that's how I was raised. Like you gotta be hard. Like, have a me mug on and kind of maintain that presence, but it's exhausting. And you can't carry that around with you 24/7. Like you got to find somebody to be able to share that with and talk through that with. And a lot of times we don't want to because of our own shame. Like I don't want to be viewed as weak. I don't want to be judged. And that's where I think sharing your own story is important, because it's not a matter of I'm giving you direction or I'm telling you what you should do. I'm just telling you what I'm going through. And my vulnerability is encouraging a conversation now because, you might think on this for 2 weeks. You might think on this for 2 years, but it'll hit you. And then all of a sudden it's going to make sense. And you might need to start dealing with those pieces. So
Yeah, it's so true, man. And it's so important. And I think that, one of the silent killers out there is obviously alcohol. Alcohol is one of those things that helps numb your pain. It's part of the cultural narrative to drink. And I mean, especially as a chef, like
Yeah.
pair it with foods and all the different things as well. Everybody does it. In fact, it's hard not to, because it's like, what do you do on a Friday night if you're single or whatever, if you're going out?
yeah,
It's like
the social
so
pressure.
is so embedded in our community. How much does it affect the hospitality industry? Alcohol
It's crazy.
specifically?
It's everything we're surrounded by, right? We sell booze, we serve booze, right? And then your entire circle is centered around operations that do the same thing. So when you're not in your own establishment, your friends, your social circle you're at their establishments. So, we were joking about this the other day. Like, most chefs in town don't know each other, but we all know every bartender. It's just, that's the
crazy.
social life. And
Yeah.
every event you go to is a wine tasting. Every event you go to is a whiskey event. Like, everything is revolving around liquor. And we have to normalize that you can still have a good time and be sober. Like, and it's not even that you have, if you don't want to be sober, don't be sober. Like, it's your choice. Do it for you though. Don't do it for other people. Like, that's the only way you're going to be successful at this, is if you want it for you. Like, I started my sober journey 18 months ago, and to be a bar owner, to be a restaurant owner, to be in the world that I'm in every day, that I'm surrounded by booze. It's not that I was out of control with my liquor. I didn't like the dependency that I had on it. Like, everything revolved around drinking. And honestly, like, it was Andrew Zimmerman who gave me the advice. Him and I were doing an event, and he said, brother, when I stopped drinking, my life just kept getting better, and it just never stopped. And like, this is one of the biggest food stars in the world, right? This dude's on every TV show. This dude lives around the world. He eats weird stuff, like, but he's been sober for 30 years. And it was the first chef I'd ever really talked to at that level that was so open and so nonchalant about it. Like, yeah, it's nothing. And I know he's, it's not saying that it's not nothing, but it just encouraged me. And then I started meeting other chefs and their journeys, and kind of hearing, oh, I'm 10 years sober, I'm 5 years sober, I'm 1 year sober, I'm 6 months sober. And I was like, man, I don't think I could ever do that. And then it just kind of hit me. I was super depressed a year and a half ago. I was down in my feelings. I was physically unwell. Like, I was pushing like 300 pounds. I had a broken foot. I couldn't physically do anything. And I was just kind of disconnected. I couldn't walk. So I was stuck in a bed. And, I caught myself just drinking and drinking and drinking. And I knew I needed a lifestyle change. And I think lifestyle changes require doing something you don't want to do. And I didn't want to stop drinking. So I knew that's what I had to do. And here we are 18 months later. And it's not like I was setting goals like, I'm going to do this forever. It just was like, I'm choosing right now. Like, I don't want to drink. And then it got easier and easier. And now I don't have the pressure. I'm actually way more confident not having the pressure of feeling like I have to have a drink in my hand, or, for me to be cool or me to be included, I got to be, drinking the wine or having the glass of cocktail. But I'm having way more fun sober, and I remember everything, and I don't have hangovers. And I know when I perform and I show up, it's 100% me. It's not the amplified version of me that is fueled by something else. Like, that was my creativity. That was my presence. That was my persona through and through. And I found other things to distract myself from that. I mean, that's why I DJ. Right? DJing is literally something for me to occupy my hands, to have something in my ears, and to be in a social setting where I don't have to talk to people. Like, I'm still in the arena. I'm still having a good time, but like, I found a way to distract myself and engage and still be creative, and it's a whole nother world. So, you got to figure out what that is for you.
I love that, man. I don't know if you've met Michelle Garrett, owner of Gratitude. It's an OCC area. It's like the first sober bar, zero proof bar in Colorado Springs area. It's awesome. But she said something on this show like a year ago when she was on. She's like, the best thing about getting sober is you get your feelings back, but also the worst thing about getting sober is you get your feelings back, and you have to confront that, right?
They don't talk about that piece. Like when you don't have that medication and you're not numbing yourself, now you got to deal with what you've been running from. And that's the hardest piece of like unpacking that closet, right? Opening the doors and those skeletons falling out, but now unpacking it and cleaning it out. And like one of my favorite books is Kill the Spider by Carlos Whitaker. And he talks about, you know, when you open a closet door and you walk into a closet door and you walk into a spider web, like you just, you know, immediately kind of flail your arms and get it off your face and you run and shut the door. And when you go back into that closet, the web's back. Like you never killed your spider. So, you know, we have to kill our spiders or our lies that we've told ourselves. Like these are agreements that we've made with ourselves internally. And if we don't kill those agreements, those lies that we have, those webs are going to keep coming back. So it is the hardest part, but it's tough because people don't like being labeled. So, you know, I'm in the middle of having a conversation right now with the city about Sober Week because it's something I've done in my restaurants every year. And the city wants to get behind it. And we've got all these amazing nonprofits involved. And we're talking about this as a citywide campaign. But one of the discussions we were having recently is like not labeling it as Sober Week because some people don't want to be sober, right? Well, what if we call it, you know, skip the sip? Now it's a challenge. Like it changes the entire thought process of what it is. So, you know, I don't think it's necessarily like forcing it on people to be like, you got to go to a sober concept or you got to be, you know, sober for this amount of time. We just need to create options that are normalized. That's why I love the transition of mocktail menus right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like my team, especially at 1118, Tapas Bar, they started making mocktails for me.
That's awesome.
Of like, chef, taste this. This is a new NA bev we just got. This is a new NA gin. This is a new NA whiskey. And I was just curious because like I never tasted that stuff. I always looked at it like, why would I taste it? I'll just go drink the real stuff. And as they started making me mocktails, eventually it turned into like we had a menu. And now we had a mocktail menu that we're offering. And I think 1118 is one of the best mocktail menus in town. 4 has a phenomenal mocktail menu as well. But I think 1118 has just, they understand it because they built it for an experience of someone who wasn't drinking. And it's kind of cool to see that diversity. And there's just so many options. That's why Sober Soiree turned into such a big event. Like we sold out 2 years in a row, 300 people to show up to a non-alcoholic event and hang out and eat food and have a good time and dance.
Awesome.
It was awesome. So much fun. Like, you know, it's just.
I have a question about that, especially like with mocktails, because obviously I think I'm around the same time as you. I stopped September 30th, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're around very similar time.
Yeah, around there, yeah.
Which is cool. But back then, and I've tried, you know, every once in a while, but I can't find like a hard liquor that emulates I was a big whiskey bourbon guy. So
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned Kentucky, like I had family in Kentucky, had the bourbon trail over there, and like I haven't found anything that can emulate that in the form of a mocktail, of like an old fashioned or anything like that. Do you guys have anything that's similar to that?
They make phenomenal old fashions that are NA, and they've got some really cool spirits. But there's one product that I'm really into right now. It's called Phony Negroni.
Okay.
And I was a big bitter cocktail fan. Like I liked a lot of my Amaros. I liked a lot of my bitter, you know, flavor profiles. And Negroni was definitely my go-to. Mezcal Negronis were like my jam. So they make a product that is really good. And I catch myself when I'm looking for a social element, like it's perfect because it's non-alcoholic. It has all the bitter elements that I want. If I want to add a little carbonation to it, I can to dilute it a tad bit, but it's, you know, there's some really good stuff out there. So yeah, I mean, check them out.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I remember when we met at Sober Soiree, I think it was like end of summertime, if I remember correctly. You had like lost a ton of weight too. And like, it's insane to understand the elements of alcohol, because for even me, I lost like 15 pounds. I only was drinking once or twice a week.
Yeah.
And just right away.
The carbs, the sugar. And then, you know, you think about that cycle. I would drink at work and justify it as work. right? I've got to taste this spirit. I've got to taste this wine. Like we're writing this menu. We're buying this product. Like vendors are coming in. Like I'm justifying all these little tastings all day at work. And then after work, it's like, all right, now I need a glass to like enjoy. So it might be a glass of wine. It might be a old fashioned. And then it was like another one. Then it becomes social, fun. And then you like, you wake up the next morning, you hung over and you're like, I need some greasy food to soak it up. And then you need a hair of the dog, you need a beer. And you're in this endless cycle of you're making these bad decisions with your diet because you're drinking. And these things sound good, right? Pizza makes sense when you're drinking at 2 a.m, or tacos or whatever it is. And like, you're not fasting, you're not controlling the amount of carbs that are going in, the amount of sugar that you're consuming. And, you're just in this cycle of dehydration. And yeah, I mean, that was the biggest thing that I learned with my weight loss was like, I had more energy, but also it was what I was fueling my body with. And when the alcohol came out of it, I mean, it changed everything for me.
Was there ever like a transition? Like for me personally, like I used to love having a glass of whiskey with my friends and having them over. I still have my whiskey bar there. I just haven't touched it in like a year and a half, which is crazy. But like we had a whole bourbon bar, still do, but we come over and like I feel like it would tap into some other part of me where I wouldn't be able to have those conversations unless I had like 1 or 2 drinks or whatever it was. I quickly realized that's not the case, but like with you, you're actually a creative in what you do on an everyday basis. Was there a transition with your level of creativity, or did it like enhance it when you were sober? Talk to us about that.
I think there's more clarity. I think for sure. I think way clearer now. I'm able to kind of dig deeper, process, drill down, devise my plans and strategize, and then execute a lot cleaner than I was before. Like, I think I was just kind of like off the cuff a lot of it. And like, the experience and the talent kind of blend together with the liquid courage. But yeah, I mean, I think just having this clarity has allowed me to find other inspirations and other pieces. I mean, the whole music thing, like I just did a dinner last week on creating a music playlist and having a DJ spin it live based on a menu I wrote inspired by sound and color. And
awesome, man.
Like we went on this journey of music and food and emotion and feeling. I don't think I ever would have created something like that if I wasn't at this clarity. And I think that's kind of fun to like realize like I'm extremely sober and I'm still putting out really cool stuff.
It's freaking awesome. So you combine the music with the food.
Yeah, I wrote 5 courses inspired by color, and then I wrote each course as if it was a deep house song. So each course was like, indigo blue or, dawn sunrise. Like I wrote them as if they like, as someone who plays the music, like I wrote them as if I was listening to those songs. And once I got in, and then each course was like all colored by that, specific decision. So like if it was the yellow course, it was like saffron and turmeric and fennel, like all these yellow things on the plate to hit this like yellow ambient sound that I envisioned when I wrote this dish. And then I gave that inspiration to the DJ, who's a friend of mine. And I said, create me a playlist that's like 12 to 15 minutes long, because that's how long it's going to take these guests to eat it.
Oh, nice.
So as they ate the dish, I'd come out, give them a description, and it was in our private studio above 1118. We had a sold out dinner up there for this.
That's awesome.
They ate the course. We had the whole room set up with like Google lights so we could transition the colors to match the filling of the food. And, he created sounds to play with it. So I think I'm definitely doing very creative things still. I just have a lot more clarity in like my intention.
Yeah, you're tapping into something that's very stimulating, because like think about like some of the most stimulating things on the planet. It's like music and food.
Anything, I think any art, right? Any art that it invokes emotion.
Yeah.
Like, can I stimulate an emotion in you? Like that's art. I don't care if it's food, if it's music, if it's something visual, a drawing, a painting, a film. a sunset, all these things are just, they're triggering something. And if you can trigger something and you can get that emotion out of somebody, you're creating art. And, we've always had this argument as chefs with each other, is our chefs artists or our chefs craftsmen? And I think we're both. I think you have to be good at your craft. You have tools, you have to do reps, you have to manipulate ingredients. But there's also, a lot of emotion attached to it, a lot of expression. My food, and it's so funny, I find this parallel between music as a DJ and as a chef. When you take a song a producer has created, right? They've created this song from their head with different instruments and sounds and vocals, and they've built this track for you to hear. And the DJ takes that song and plays it for an audience and really gives it its own personality. They put their personality into that playlist. They mix it with this, and they spin it at the right time because they're controlling the audience. They're controlling. I think about it the same way as a chef. Like, my producer is my farmer, and my job is to not mess up what the farmer did, who raised the animal, who raised the produce. But at the same time, I need to put my own self into that. I need to put my story into that. I need to put my thoughts into it. And now I need you to enjoy it. And I need to give it to an audience. I need them to experience it. And I need to tell the story. So I find these cool parallels between music and food that I don't think I ever would have found had I not gone on this journey, 2 years ago, year and a half ago.
Yeah, man, congratulations on that. That's
Thank you.
freaking awesome. That's a hell of a milestone for someone in your industry specifically to hit that. But just as a human being, it's super impressive.
Well, and to find ways to turn it into business too, right?
right.
Like, to justify it. Because I think that's the other part of this, is like, the entrepreneur in me is like, okay, cool, I want to buy a big board and I want to buy big speakers. Like, now I need to actually create this as a business expense. Like,
Right.
this needs to make sense. So now in my catering services, we offer music and entertainment.
Oh, that's cool.
So now we can supply your sound system. Now we can supply your DJ. We can supply your lights. We can do all these things. But really, it was just a reason for me to have the access to be able to play on this stuff, to learn more, right? And now I get to play really big shows, and I get to do really cool concerts and events that it's a trip. Like, I've never thought about doing something other than what I've always done for the last 3 decades until I started DJing. And I have no idea where it's taking me, because my path will be unlike anybody else's, because I'm authentically me. Can't nobody be me, and I'm always going to be me. But it's cool to blend the two together, of my brand as a chef and as a restaurateur and as a hospitality professional and as a speaker and as an author, to now a musician and starting to, produce and starting to curate playlists and entertain crowds. Like, I mean, going up to like Aspen Food and Wine and playing one of the, celebrity parties, like, as a Top Chef, like, that's what got me in the door. They're like, absolutely, we want Top Chef Brother Luck to come play the party. Like, that'll trip people out because the fan base is already there.
Right.
So I found ways to, utilize my entrepreneurial mindset and apply it to the creativity that I have right now and where I'm being inspired by and how I need to express that.
You're literally a one-man show then. You're part of everything. You check the box, music, food, everything now.
But I keep great people around me in all those realms.
Yeah.
Right. I hang out with a lot of amazing DJs who I ask a lot of questions to.
That's cool, man.
I work with amazing cooks and chefs who inspire me, who are pushing me to be better about the food. Like, the writers that I'm around help me not only create my book, but allow me to do my blogs, allow me to do my posts, allow me to do my LinkedIns. Like, all these people in all these different sectors are just inspiring me. And I think that's what it's about, is it's, as much as it's a one-man show, it's the people that you're keeping around you.
100%. And it actually leads to my next question about the state of downtown Colorado Springs, or just the food scene in Colorado Springs in general and how it's changed. I would love for you to speak to that as a chef here locally, about like the state of the Springs, the food scene here, and maybe even some of your favorite spots too, to give some people some shout outs.
Man, I've watched it for the last 20 years. And it's crazy that it's been 20 years. Like I trip out when I realize it's been 20 years since I originally came here. I saw something special last week downtown, and we hosted a knife fight, which we used to do back in the day. Like when I first started my business, it was a way for me to get people to come to the Triple Nickel because it was off the beaten path. Like you would never just walk over there, or you would never go into that bar. So I had to create things that were different. And I created knife fights here in town because my friend had a show and I thought the show was awesome and I wanted to do that locally. So I started inviting chefs to battle, and it was entertainment. Like people would come watch these chefs duke it out.
So what's a knife fight, by the way?
Like we give 2 chefs random ingredients. We give them an hour. We pick judges out of the crowd, and they have full access to the restaurant to create whatever they want to create.
Awesome.
And it's wild. It's so much fun. So we did that for like, 3-4 years earlier in my career. And then everyone kept asking me to bring them back. So now with 1118, and 1118 has this really cool, it used to be a bar. I've converted it into actual like a show kitchen. So I've actually been bringing chefs back into this. And last week we had a battle between 2 chefs, one from Ephemera and one from District 11.
Nice.
And Dustin and Justin threw down. And not only did they both put out really good food in an hour with 2 mystery ingredients that they had no idea what was coming, the crowd was full of chefs and servers and bartenders. And I remember looking around. I was talking with Matt Schnipper about this, our local food writer. I was looking at this crowd, and he's been here, just as long as I have. Mm-hmm. And he's like, dude, this is insane. Like the generations of chef in this room, the evolution of food. Like as much as people discredit this town for being, lack of meat and potatoes, very corporate driven, people are still fighting every day to create and do something different. I think when you see some of the food coming out of like, Chiba, like it's crazy. Like they're doing good stuff. And Ephemera is pushing boundaries. Like Ian is always, and I knew Ian when Ian was a dishwasher at Stagecoach. Like I was a chef at Craftwood. He was a dishwasher at Stagecoach, wow, our sister restaurant. So like, he came and worked for me at Street Eats. He worked for me at 4, and then he went off to start Ephemera. And it's amazing to see all these generations of young chefs and older chefs coming together and just building a scene and camaraderie. I think as far as like the state of downtown's a hub. Like it's always going to be a hub. It's the most common place people are willing to drive to. And I think regardless if you live up north, you live out east, you live down south, you live out west, you're fine going to downtown as knowing it's like a 15-20 minute drive. You're like, what? That's fine. I think the city's aware of changing parking situations, changing some of the homelessness challenges that we're facing. I think they're doing a really good job of trying to create more unique events that are centered around a downtown kind of feel. Like I was having a conversation with Downtown Partnership about some dance things they want to do in Adam and Alley. Like, cool. Like throwing some day parties, like having a production team come in and build a DJ stage and like lights and like, let's do a cool day party. Like, I think that's more of what we need beyond just the big festivals that come to our town that, aren't from our town. Mm-hmm. Like it's great that we get hill climb, but like most of those people aren't from Colorado Springs. We need more Colorado Springs events to be thrown for mm-hmm. Colorado Springs. So, I'm down there. I'm hanging out. I've been a part of it for a while, mm-hmm. and it's been good to me. And I'm fighting to stay here and be a part of what we're doing. And I make a choice to be here. I could be in any other city in the world, but I choose to live here in Colorado Springs. I choose to have my businesses in Colorado Springs, and I choose to represent Colorado Springs. And at the end of the day, like, being here in Colorado Springs, I've been on Top Chef. I've had accolades from Food and Wine. I've had New York Times write-ups like that. I never expected that to happen here in Colorado Springs. So it just goes to show that there's way more depth of what's going on here than what people give it credit for. They're not scratching hard enough. Like there's some really cool stuff. there's some great programs.
That's awesome. That's part of our story too, is to uncover those stories and put them on the show. And just like you said, there's so many amazing people doing amazing things. Like Andrew founding the show and just like starting this whole thing is just like, it's insane. We're just talking about Matthew Bean. I mean, a huge YouTuber here in the Springs. Or just
Matthew Schnipper too, like you said.
Matthew Schnipper.
Yeah.
He's been on 2 or 3 times, you know, it's really cool. And people don't understand that. And so it's so cool.
There's so much depth there. And, you know, you can choose to see the surface level of it, but I think any city you can do that with.
Well, this city also has a good surface level too, so it's a beautiful scene.
No, I literally just flew a chef out today. A good friend of mine from Louisville, James Beard nominee.
Nice.
You know, high level cooking. Coming out of Kentucky, I cooked at his restaurant last year, and we hit it off. And I was like, dude, I'd love for you to come to Colorado Springs, because I fly a lot of chefs here. Because I've realized throughout my travels, most of these chefs don't come to Colorado Springs. They'll go to Denver, they'll go to Boulder, they'll go to Aspen. But unless they're doing something like for a private client at Broadmoor or Garden of the Gods, they don't come here. So I fly a lot of the chefs here to experience this. And I asked them, we're gonna curate a menu together.
That's cool.
And we're gonna sell out a dinner, and it's going to be based on your cuisine, my thoughts, my cuisine, and my team. And it's for our community. And I want them to experience it because, you know, most of them won't get to experience some of these chefs who have been on television, who have reached these statuses or these accolades. So it's really cool. Like, you know, Dallas is here. We're doing a dinner at my restaurant on Thursday. We have a sold out dinner. We're doing 6 courses. And my first thoughts were like, when I was there, the dinner I did with him was we did a partnership with Makers. So Makers came down, they brought some bourbon barrels, and like we did this really big whiskey dinner. And of course, like it's Louisville. Like,
yeah, my family was in Lexington.
Yeah, it's expected.
Yeah.
So of course, bringing him here, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to introduce him to some of our whiskey. So I have a collaboration with 291.
Nice.
You know, I've known Michael a long time. I love Michael. They've been recognized as world's best small batch for their rye. And how appropriate to bring one of my favorite whiskey friends to do a dinner with a Kentucky chef and then showcase his Kentucky flavors with it. So, you know, that's a perfect example of like, we bring a lot of people here. And the first thing he said when he got here, he's staying at the Miami Exchange. He was like, it is gorgeous. I can't tell you how many celebrity chefs I fly here, and they're like, this place is amazing. I'm like, I know.
A lot of people see it and then they stay.
Yeah,
I'm one of those.
This is why I'm here. Like this is perfect for me. Like I can ski all season. I can golf all summer. And then there's an international airport, and we also have Colorado Springs Airport, which is growing.
Yeah.
So there's so much to be said of being in this region. I love the city. It's amazing.
We do too, man. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and some of the things you've pulled out of business from your whole journey. It's been so incredible. This is your camera right here. Where can we find you?
Yeah, you can follow me at Chef Brother Luck across the board, Instagram, Facebook, website, all that good stuff, chefbrotherluck.com. 2 restaurants here in town, 1118 Latin Tapas Bar or 4 by Brother Luck, both downtown. Stay tuned. We've got Brother Luck Street Eats coming into Colorado Springs Airport. So we're very excited about that partnership, just to kind of continue growing what we're doing in our city. And check out the book, No Luck's Given. Life is hard, but there is hope. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. And it's also recorded on Audible or Spotify Premium. And I recorded it myself. So check it out.
That's awesome, man. I actually have one more thing for you too, just because we're going to have JW on the show here in about a month or so. Don't know if you know him personally or anything like that, but like, I kind of want this to be something we can do on some of our special episodes. It's like, is there any questions that you'd like for us to ask JW specifically as someone who's kind of rising up in the community, who's doing really big things, someone
Restaurateur.
a restaurateur,
Yeah.
anything you'd like to ask him?
Yeah. When's he going to open a restaurant with me?
There you go. Nice. That's good.
That's perfect, bro. We'll ask him that for sure. JW, he's calling you out, man.
That'd be a good collaboration for sure.
No, I love what he's doing. You know, I had one of his team members in my restaurant the other day, and they were just sharing some of his aspirations and what that whole company's doing, and you know how many cities they're actually doing this with, not just
Yeah.
Colorado
Yeah.
Springs. And I think that's something that I'm very curious and interested in is how to take what we've done here in our city and take that to other markets. And I love that, because that's probably where I want to go with my next step in my career, is like, I want to take the special recipe that we've done here for culinary and hospitality and community and replicate that in multiple cities. So we can empower and we can impact so many others. I think that's what it's about. So
That's awesome. Well, that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much again for your time. This has been awesome. This has been the COS Business Podcast. Please like and subscribe. Anything else?
Yeah, no, this is good, man. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Oh yeah. Leave a review.
Awesome, man.